So if you watched my last video, then you know that I built a massive acoustic panel right here. This thing is 4 foot by 4 foot and 6 inches deep. And if you didn't know that, what are you doing, you silly goose? Go back and watch that last video. Learn how to build this thing. Now the next problem that I need to contend with is how on earth am I going to mount this thing to the wall? And I feel like a lot of people run into that problem, so we're going to contend with that right now. Now there's a lot of ways to mount something like this onto the wall. I see a lot of people use one of those, those sawtooth picture frame hangers, wire picture frame hangers. What I'm going to use something called a French cleat. So a French cleat is basically a pair of metal sheets that will interlock together. So this is the side that goes onto the wall, and it has this little thing that kind of protrudes out, and this goes onto the thing that you're trying to hang, and it just kind of interlocks like this. These ones are rated to 75 pounds, so I'm not too worried. This thing is not nearly close to 75 pounds. So one way that you could do this is to just simply screw this directly into the wall, but I want a little bit of an air gap behind the acoustic panel. Adding an air gap behind the acoustic panel actually improves its effectiveness. So if I added, let's say 3 inches of an air gap to this 6-inch panel, theoretically, it acts roughly like a 9-inch panel. There are diminishing returns to how much of a gap that you start adding, so you don't have to have the panel like a foot off the wall, but in general, it's good to have at least a few inches behind it. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to mount these pieces of wood onto the wall first. So this is a 1x6. This is a 1x2. The 1x6 is going to go directly onto the wall sideways. This is going to go into the 1x6, and then the French cleat is going to go into this. And so in total, there should be around 3 or so inches of a gap behind the actual acoustic panel. And as you can see right here, there's yet another 1x2 that's mounted onto the actual panel itself. So this is going to contribute to that gap. Now, exactly how high you actually mount the panel is going to be dependent on the dimensions of your room. I want the top of my panel floating around 6 feet high. So I have this horizontal 1x2 that's on the acoustic panel about 12 inches from the top of the panel right here. So in order to have this about 6 feet off the ground, I want the French cleat to end up around here. This is about 5 feet. So I already have everything measured out. The front wall here is 197 inches across, so the halfway point is 86.5 inches. So I already have the halfway point marked down, and I have the halfway point of this 1x6 already marked down. So the first challenge is going to be mounting this onto the wall first. And in order to do that, I need to figure out where all the studs are and drill a screw that's long enough. I'm going to use 3-inch deck screws to secure this and fasten this onto the wall. All right, so that's about where I want it to stay. So I'm just going to spend some time figuring out where the studs are. Ideally, you want to use a stud finder. Weirdly, there is an app for the iPhone that is supposed to be able to find studs. So I'm going to see if that works. Hey guys, Future Ken here, just to quickly interrupt and say that that plan in fact did not work. Do not use your iPhone as a stud finder. So I did a little bit of research. Apparently the stud finder uses a device called the magnetometer within the iPhone, but that device is actually used to detect differences in electromagnetic fields, meaning that it's detecting metal, not the different densities of material in the wall. So while you're going to see that the stud finder is actually working, it's detecting the completely wrong thing. So you're about to watch me spend way too much time trying to detect the studs with my phone. I do this dumb thing where I start knocking on the wall to see if I'm able to hear where the studs are in the wall. I end up drilling a bunch of holes and screws into the wall, missing the studs every time, and it all keeps going downhill until I use the outlet as a reference point and measure out where the studs should be, and I finally start hitting it. All of this to say, just spend the $20, buy yourself a stud finder, and just save yourself the massive headache. If YouTubers are regularly endorsing products, this is like an anti-endorsement for any stud finding app. It doesn't work, don't do it. All right, so check this out. I am just going to casually go along right here and boom. That's where the stud is. That's where I made my markings, okay? The next one, not detecting, not detecting, not detecting, not detecting, boom. Right here, starts here, ends about right there. And studs are normally, you know, as a standard, they're 16 inches apart. So, boom, that is 16 inches exactly. The hard part here now is securing this into the wall. Figured out where all the studs are. Biggest thing, I think, is just making sure that the thing is actually level. I hope that when it's into the right spot. Wait, why is that like staying anchored? I didn't miss the stud.
Did you miss the stud?
Did I miss it?
That sounded different.
That did not actually hit anything though. Yeah, I should not be doing that. Okay, this is kind of embarrassing. I've used at least a dozen nails, and I think I only finally hit the stud right here. Yeah, screws. I actually went behind the wall, but it was completely covered in fiberglass, so I actually couldn't see anything.
10 screws, so not quite a dozen.
Not quite a dozen. That was kind of...
Did it.
I finally did it. Now I could take some of these out, and now I'm pretty confident that from now, I'm gonna be real mad if I miss. There it is. There it is. Oh my god. Did it. There it is. More and more secure. There we go. There we go.
Yay!
That was the hardest part. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's not level. I'm just kidding.
I think that would be more of a joke on you.
Yeah, it would have been. All right, so now that that's in, the next step. So this 1x2 is going to go right about here to just give it a little bit of an extra air gap.
Can I let go now?
Yes. All right, and that's what that looks like right there. All right, so the next part is to just install the French cleat. All right, so that's how it looks, like that. And this thing has it mounted right here as well. So let's see how this looks here. All right, so right now it is a little bit slanted just because I need to add a little bit of a bumper to the bottom of the actual pad, because right now if I don't have anything there, it's just kind of leaning downwards. So just need to add a little bit of something to just keep it out like that. And I think that should hold pretty well. But that's gonna be tomorrow's problem. Okay, so it's a few days later. Got a lot of the little boring bits done, like installing the French cleat onto this. So the wall-mounted French cleats are into the 1x2 here. And on each of the panels, I have another 1x2 kind of spanning across, and then the actual other French cleat that goes into this one is installed onto each of these. But I did make kind of a last-minute decision change. So I did not kind of foresee that the 1x2 that's on the 4-foot panel, because it's so long, it actually sags where the French cleat is, and I didn't foresee that, so that's kind of a whoopsie on my part. So, last minute decision, instead of actually using the French cleat as the mounting point, the French cleat is only going to be there as a safety catch. So, I'm just going to have this 1x2 right here, sitting on top of this 1x2, kind of like a shelf, and then at the very bottom, because it's going to mount kind of like this and it's going to slant downwards, I'm going to take this piece of scrap wood and just create a little bit of a bumper at the very bottom, so it just kind of sits nice and flat that way. Okay, so just to illustrate what I meant by all of that, this is essentially what it looks like on the wall. The French cleat is right here. It's going to line up with the French cleat that's on this panel right here. And it's going to act as a safety catch in case the panel falls off. So this 1x2 on the back of this panel is just going to sit on top like this. And that is actually pretty secure, but in the off chance that it falls off because of any reason, that French cleat is actually just going to catch it like that there, and now it's on the French cleat. And then looking down here at the very bottom of the panel here, it's kind of sagging downwards or hanging downwards at the very bottom. So I'm going to take this scrap piece of wood right here and then just kind of place it right here. I'm not gonna actually secure it into the panel just because I'm a bit lazy right now. That scrap piece of wood just happened to be the perfect dimensions to make this happen right here. All right, so that's basically it. I have all of the panels mounted onto the wall right now. I know that there's not as much of an air gap behind each of the panels since I'm not using the French cleat, but I'd rather have the security rather than that extra inch that I would have gotten. Eventually I'm going to probably add some sort of lighting like this around all of the panels here, just to add a little bit of character, some of that RGB goodness. And then after that, it's just putting my setup back together right here. Probably have my speakers right around here, about 40 inches away from the wall. Put the desk back together, and then I think it should look really good. Anyways, if you got this far, thanks so much for watching. I know that wasn't the most exciting thing, but I'm hoping that it gave somebody some sort of idea of how to go about mounting something like this onto the wall. I know that's always a challenge. I don't think I've met anybody who didn't run into some sort of problem with mounting something as big as this directly onto the wall and everything. If you need an idea of how to build an acoustic panel, especially one that's as big as this, check out my last video. But anyways, that's about it. Thanks so much for watching. Let's create something. All right.